So in our last lesson, we were able to add a little bit of shadows and adjust our text a little bit. And now we're going to go ahead and focus on really getting this integrated with our footage. So as we zoom in a little bit, some things that we can do for this text, let's take a look at. So we do have this text looking very, very crisp. And we also have the shape that we've created that is casting a shadow. And so one thing that we can do is we can we take this same shape and we're going to knock out the text as it is. You can see as we move in our footage that it is actually kind of moving out in front of this building, as it, and it shouldn't do that because in theory it's supposed to be behind this building. So let's go ahead and let's create some duplicates here. We're going to create a duplicate of our camera, so Control D, and we're going to create a duplicate of our shadow, Control D. And so now that we have this shadow, we can right click on it, or we can hit enter, and we'll call this our track. How about track matte? And then what we'll do is let's go ahead and go to our material options, and instead of cast shadows only, we're going to go ahead and turn that off. And we can also give it a color if that will help you. So you can come up to your fill with that layer selected, and maybe we'll choose like this gray or something like that. And then we're going to go ahead and close that up, and then we're going to take our track, or the duplicate of our tracker camera, and hold Shift, or actually hold Control, and then click that track matte, and we're going to pre-compose. So you can just right click and pre-compose it, and we'll call it our track matte. Now we'll put everything in that layer, and we didn't even need a light for that one. And then we're going to grab our shadow, our parallel light, our text, and that 3D tracker camera. Right click, and we're going to pre-compose those, and that will be our text layer. Awesome. So now we can actually take this text layer and we can create a track matte using this layer that's sitting on top of it. And the track matte is kind of like a mask, except it's looking at either its luminance or its alpha layer, and it's using it to either show and reveal, kind of like how we did with the ripples on the water for our reflection in our previous project. So let's get our text layer, and we might need to toggle these switches down here just to show this track matte column. And we're going to choose alpha inverted, and we're choosing the track matte layer. And now when we zoom in a little bit, if we just take and scroll forward or scrub forward, you can see that the building is now knocking out our text. So when we come past that 8 seconds, then now that is not coming out in front of the building. Very nice. All right, so there are a few other things that we can do. We can actually, let's see, we might need to adjust this shadow a little bit. So remember where the shadow was. The shadow is in that text layer. And let's actually get our parallel and hit AA to take a look at its options here. And we have the cast shadows is on. And for that darkness, let's maybe bring that back a little bit, maybe about 59 to 60%. Let's just change it to 60%. Very nice. And then we can go back to that main composition layer. And let's just go ahead and rename this composition layer. We'll call it, I just right clicked on this little tab. We'll just call this our main, just to keep everything straight. All right, so now that we have 2 layers here, if you notice that we no longer have anything 3D, and what that means is that all the 3D properties are within these 2 pre-comps. So now I can actually, well, you can see I just used the track matte, but I can also add any kind of effects or masks or anything like that. So for our text layer, maybe we want to add just a little bit of blurs, just so it's not so sharp. You can see how these buildings are just a little bit unsharp. So for our text, let's go and let's add a Gaussian blur. We can just type in blur and pick one of these blurs down here. We're going to grab the Gaussian. We're going to just add like not even a whole pixel, so 0.7. We'll try that out. maybe a little too much. How about 0.5? How about 0.4? So what we want to do is just kind of take that harshness off. So as we move forward, let's see. Looks great. All right, I'm happy with that. All right. So now we have a little bit of blur going on. Let's go ahead and add a vignette to this. So we'll go and let's make a new shape. So let's grab our rectangle. And for our rectangle, let's make sure nothing is selected. And we're just going to just click and drag. And we didn't choose a color first. And we want to make sure this fits our composition, so you can fit the comp. And we're going to choose this little fill color. Let's just bring it down to like almost black. And then let's get our shape. And now we're going to grab an ellipse. But we want to make sure that we are masking out. And we have the same vignette selected. We'll just grab and mask out a nice oval in the center. And then we're going to come down, and for that mask that it created, we're going to invert that. But then we're going to open up those properties for that mask, and we're going to give it some feather. And so we just want to kind of blur those edges, just like that. Awesome. So now we have a vignette, and we need to back up that vignette just a little bit. So hit T, and instead of 100%, we just want to kind of bring that down a little, about like that. Awesome. Okay, so now that we have a vignette for our scene, we need to kind of do some color adjusting. So now we can grab everything, and we can actually create an adjustment layer, but we'll just grab everything and we're going to just pre-compose. So we can right click, pre-compose, and this will be everything for filters. Well, that's it, or maybe effects is what we'll call it. Everything for effects. And we're going to go and grab a photo filter just to kind of cool this scene down. Doesn't it seem like it's kind of yellowish? We'll just cool that down. I know that's because of the smog. We'll just double click, and for our filter we actually have some presets here, and let's just cool that down a little bit. So maybe a cooling filter. Actually, that looks pretty awesome already. So now it just kind of gave everything like a nice cool color. Wow, that looks great. Okay, I'm good with that. And then before it's all said and done, maybe we should add just a little bit of grain. So we'll just type in grain, and we're going to add just a little bit of grain, just because we're going to, just add that cinematic look that we are using real footage here, or real film. So we're just going to add just a little tiny bit of grain. So we have a lot of presets here, and we do have this little viewing mode. So the preset is to have this little box where you can see the grain in. So we're going to grab one of these presets here. That's just a little bit too much grain. If you want to go ahead and see everything, you can click the final output. That's a lot of grain. How about maybe one of these Kodaks? That Kodak looks pretty good. I think what we'll use though, how about this Eastman, the 50D? Let's see what that looks like. So that's actually not too bad at all. It all just kind of looks like some nice grain on our scene. So I'm going to go ahead and get a RAM preview of that. And actually, there's a lot of grain back here. Let's go ahead and maybe bring that size just down a little bit. So that size is like 0.5, and then the softness, maybe we'll just soften it up to a little bit. How about 1.5? So now we have a little bit of grain. We have a vignette. Everything has been nice and cooled down. And so now let's go ahead and take a look at that RAM preview. So hit the 0 on the numeric keyboard, and I'll be right back after that is finished. All right, let's take a look at that RAM preview now that we've finished adding these effects. So it looks pretty good. Like, it's really following along with our building, and you can see that we're able to mimic those shadows that we have in the rest of this footage. So we have this nice angle, the same angle that this building is casting a shadow onto our text. everything looks nice and integrated since we've added a little bit of grain to everything. We have a vignette. And so now that everything looks great, then let's go ahead and for our next lesson, we're going to be integrating some graphic animations into our footage.